We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot, season number 4, episode number 53. And yeah, man, if it's your first time listening, we on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. We provide high fire takes and analysis across the sport and landscape. And if you're OG of the show, man, I appreciate the check-in once again. And boy, we at the top of the week. And first and foremost, man, I hope you guys, I know it's, Young Tuesday, man, but I hope you guys had a great weekend as we mosey on into this week. And it was a lot jumping off across the sport landscape this weekend. And boy, I hope you guys first and foremost, again, that you got a chance to relax over the weekend. I know I did. Summertime is kind of brewing right now. We're a couple weeks away before the holiday. So it's definitely that chill out, hang out, cool out type period, as well as across the sporting landscape. You got things kind of getting into the thick of things as far as the season is concerned. I want to send a shout out to the National Hockey League, man. They're in the playoffs right now, man. I know we don't cover a lot of hockey, man, but, I'm from a hockey town, man, Chicago, man. Blackhawks all day, but, it's playoff time across the board, man. We got the NBA. It's now. We got the Final Four set in the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals. And I bet you it wasn't unanimously the 4 teams that you probably predicted at the beginning of the year. And I think this is what the NBA wants. This is what the NBA wants from a standpoint of, they've been trying to ride the backs of just the OG stars, man, for so many years, whether it be LeBron James, whether it be Kevin Durant, of the world, Giannis of the world, even though Giannis is a little bit younger than that particular group per se, but Steph Curry, who's 37 years old. Are we seeing a changing of the guard in the NBA? Because I believe so. I think it's here. As the old heads would say, man, I think the apocalypse is here, man. It's changing over to a young guy league. And it's just the evolution of basketball. I've been watching the NBA, man, and getting down with it, man, almost close a little bit over 40 years now. And so, it's a situation where, man, the old heads, they got to step to the side at some point. And it's not that they're not appreciated per se. It's not that Kevin Durant is not still that guy. A guy that go out there and get you, 25 a night without even breaking a sweat. That's just easy money, man. Easy money sniper. So it's not a knock on the game or not a knock, just the contributions that Steph Curry was able to do this season for the Golden State Warriors. It's not a shot at that. It's just that at the end of the day now, which you got the new, rules as far as, not, I wouldn't say free agency, but as far as the cap is concerned and luxury tax and the repeat offender tax. And, they pretty much kind of phased out Adam Silver has as far as just the 3 megastar type of model. Now, we've seen, the Phoenix Suns do that just, past 2 seasons pretty much, and it was a crash and burn. So I think we're transitioning from that, and it's really about just them tight tools, man. And when you look at just the Final 4 teams remaining, we're going to obviously get into that, just a little bit here. That's a common denominator. That's the common denominator, man. So we definitely going to get into that. Can't forget about also, too, man, another sports league that's on the come up right now, man, as far as the popularity and the interest is concerned, is the WNBA. Now, they're definitely back into the fold. Got Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark out there getting into it. It was kind of ugly, too, man. I'm a Chicago Sky fan. Just go ahead and put it out there. And it got ugly real quick. And, it was, even though it was a little scuffle, it just let, me know that, man, the Fever is a real basketball club, and it's not really just riding on the backs of Caitlin Clark. You got, Leah Boston's of the world, on that ball club. And so they're playing like a cohesive unit. It's good to see. You obviously want Caitlin Clark to be in a situation where, she can come in and play some good ball, and also, to the team, make a long playoff run. It's best for the WNBA for the circumstances to be as such. So, I was glad to see, the ladies back. Can't forget about the New York Liberty defending WNBA champions. They back into the fold, man. We had a lot of movement across the offseason in the WNBA. And so, we'll get into that, a little bit as this season kind of edges a little long right now, man. We just got, the sticker smell still on the seasons very early on. And then also, too, you just can't forget. This time of the year, as I mentioned, man, it's really all about, legacies and so forth. And, guys trying to, get to that upper crust as NBA stardom. Would you say, if you had to pick, between just that guy on the 4 teams remaining, whether it be Anthony Edwards in Minnesota, whether it be Jalen Brunson for the New York Knicks, whether it be Tyrese Halliburton. So, it's still some quality talent with this Final Four. I've been hearing a lot of rumblings, a lot of people mad, thinking that the ratings are going to go down because these teams are not exciting and not, sexy or whatever. Look at a team like OKC. Won 68 games, 2 away from the 70 piece. And, a lot of people saying, hey, is it they turn? Now, they got to mature a little bit, maybe one more year. Nah, it may be not one more year. It could be this year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander definitely will get that MVP award, man, coming up probably in the next couple of weeks. And so, they're in a, crosshairs with the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that got to the Western Conference Finals last year. They ran out of gas a little bit when they got to the Western Conference Finals, getting knocked off by the Dallas Mavericks. But, this is a team that they got the gleam too. They got the gleam as well. So, I can't wait for this matchup. As I mentioned, you got, 4 youngins who, running things right now across the NBA landscape, and it's good to see. And I think it's a fresh air for the rest of the league. You can put to bed some of these tired storylines that it seems like mainstream media always try to recycle on you and keep bringing it back, such as, and this is not a knock again on Lakers fans, but just how the network cover that team versus, say, other teams across the league. And I understand that they, earned it to a certain degree as far as, being one of the legacy franchises in the NBA. But if you're trying to bring the ratings up, you got to showcase the stars of the league or the young players of the league. And that's something going back to David Stern. And so I think, like I said, this is a good situation for the NBA. Adam Silver, he can stop, just sweating the old heads, man, and trying to just kind of push certain narratives to where, at the end of the day, these dudes not going to play forever, man. As I mentioned, Steph, he 37 now. Durant, 36, 37. LeBron, 40 years old. Jimmy Butler, 35 years old. And so we'll see. But, coming up in a little bit, man, I'm going to get into the whole playoff slate. I'm going to break down, man, the Final Four, the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. Matchup, later on tonight between, the young Thunder and the young, OKC and Minnesota Timberwolves. Couldn't even get it out, man. It's just so crazy around here, man, as far as just the excitement about this series. And obviously you got the Knicks and the Indiana Pacers, man. So we'll definitely see what it do. When I come back, I'm going to break down just those whole series respectively, just what we got out here on the forefront and what I think that may happen in the series. And better yet, also to the young predictions, man. So we'll see what it do. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. Welcome back. And these playoffs, man. Boy, these playoffs, man. It's all about legacy. Just all about legacy right now. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, man, we've seen a changing of the guard in the NBA. Some of the superstars that we've gotten used to over the years, over the past, decade plus, putting in work. We don't see him here at the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference Finals as the Boston Celtics eliminated last year NBA champions. They got knocked out. It's orange and blue skies up there in New York for the New York Knicks as the Knicks was able to knock off the Boston Celtics. Man, in an epic game, number 6, 119-81. We all know what it do, man. Madison Square Garden was straight on one. It was a good sight to see, man. Now I'm not gonna go ahead and front. We full disclosure over here, man, that we on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. I'm a Bulls fan, man. I go back to the epic, 90s matchup between, Patrick Ewing, man, and, Mike and Pippen and, just the whole, New York Knicks, just aura. Back in the day, had us scared to death up in Chicago. Rest in peace, Anthony Mason. John Starks, of course, Charles Oakley, old school Bull. And this is a new era for New York Knicks basketball. And first and foremost, man, I got to send a shout out to Leon Rose, the general manager of the New York Knicks. Leon Rose, if those who don't know, is a former scout in the NBA. Had a nice little clientele across the league as far as players is concerned, and he decided to go into the front office. Now, we've all seen just the whole thing with James Dolan over the years, the owner of the New York Knicks, most notably, kicking out Charles Oakley, man, had security. Let my man, Oakley get a little rambunctious up in Madison Square Garden. But, for me, I didn't know what to expect from Leon Rose. We've seen, big name guys have that seat, fill that seat, whether it be Phil Jackson, a few years back, whether it be Isaiah Thomas and that whole Stephon Marbury situation. So we've seen, Knicks, former players, take to him at the GM spot, but, just wasn't working. And so for me, they went the agent route, and Leon Rose, shout out to him. He's done a good job. Now, the Mikal Bridges situation, they paid a poll tax for that, bringing him over from Brooklyn over to, downtown Manhattan. But it's a situation right now where the Knicks, after knocking off the Boston Celtics, and I'll get into the season a little bit, but this New York Knicks team, man, is gaining momentum by the round, by the game. And Jalen Brunson is that guy. Straight that guy. If there's any more doubters, man, with Jalen Brunson, man, you just straight hating. Because, what he's been able to do over the past 2 playoffs, just been outstanding. Those who are OGs of the show, know. I've been watching Jalen Brunson, man, hoop since he was 16 years old in high school, man, in Chicagoland area. So, I seen it in him, but I didn't expect him to be a guy like this. I didn't expect him to be, throwing, heavyweight knockout blows to contenders like this. And just with the surrounding cast, OG Ananoblies of the world, and the guy who, to me, got to put on that Superman cape at some point, man, if the Knicks want to move forward towards the NBA Finals and have a shot at winning the NBA championship, and it's called Anthony Towns. Towns, to me, glorified with the J. At the end of the day, man, I don't care how good you're able to shoot from the outside, man. When you 6'11", bro, you got to be able to get some of them points in the paint and get some of them dog points, man. Those are like momentum type points, and give you those psychological advantages in a playoff situation, especially with a long series with a team. Because it seemed like every time Karl Anthony Towns put the ball on the deck, it's a line drive, and it looked like he about to slip on a banana peel at the end. So, to me, he still got, a little bit, more in his system as far as, what he's able to contribute to the New York Knicks. And, we'll see. There's been a lot of critics as well with Tom Thibodeau, taking the job up there in New York, and just, with the moves that the Knicks have made, and, just the pressure and the thirst from the fan base up in New York. I know Spike Lee right now doing cartwheels still right now. But, he got an old school opponent, as far as team is concerned, where he's been down this road before. And we'll get into that in a little bit. I definitely want to transition over to the Boston Celtics, man. This is an organization, starting with Brad Stevens, man, going from head coach to general manager. They've done a flawless job over the last, 6 seasons. Just with, to me, the main thing is really just building around Tatum and Brown and bringing in some of them others. And some of them others, guys such as Derek Whites of the world, such as Drew Holidays of the world, such as old man Al Horfords of the world. These guys have been major contributors to the Boston Celtics. Can't forget about, Hauser, who just came back for the Boston Celtics, who's nicked up a little bit during the playoffs. They got guys. And so just to see Jason Tatum get injured, and we all knew in the back of our mind what time it was, man, as far as, once he got knocked out with the blown Achilles, this series was over. And the Knicks was in a prime position to capitalize, and sometimes that's just how the ball bounces in the playoffs sometimes. You keep it 100. If you really take a deep dive in some of the teams that have won an NBA championship probably over the last, say, 20 years or so, even going back a little bit, that's that one common denominator. Somebody getting hurt on the other team. Or, one of your players getting hurt and then somebody stepping up for your team. And so we've seen it in many forms and many machinations around the NBA. But I just think that, for me, the New York Knicks, just exposing the Boston Celtics as far as them being a man down, was poetic justice from a standpoint of, it's hard to repeat in this league. Think about it. Last team that we've seen repeat was the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant. Yeah, it's been that long. And so, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, it's a change in the guard. Pretty much everybody that's left in the playoffs, which, I'm going to take a deep dive in a little bit on. It's just new ground, new pastures, opportunities to seize. And so we'll see what these teams do. It's just going to be, just kind of one of those things where I think the first couple of games is going to be a fill out period. And I think we really going to get into the nitty gritty, just in regards of, just what we're seeing from competitive basketball. But I can't forget about the game on Sunday between Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets, game 7 of the Western Conference semifinals. Denver, had a long season, moved on from Mike Malone right before the playoffs. Got in, young Alleman, take the helm. This is a team that, just got out of a tough situation in the first round with the Los Angeles Clippers, winning that series in 7 games, and they was back in another one. But this time, Oklahoma City had home court advantage. You had a situation with Aaron Gordon, he was nicked up, and I believe, and it's something for me. When they fired Mike Malone, I just knew that this team, they just didn't have just that oomph to get him over the hump in tough playoff situations. And I think this is proof and evidence of it. Is obviously the Oklahoma City Thunder was able to win this game 7, 125-93, and the game really wasn't that close. It just like a bonfire was let out, in the second quarter and beyond, and just spread and it just burnt down the whole farmland. And to me, it was just a good test from a young ball club in the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, this is a team that I haven't been, skeptical with some of my OGs, but I wasn't saying it with my chest, that this team who won 68 ball games would be able to, make a move and get all the way to the NBA Finals and have a chance at winning the NBA Finals. Now, I wasn't all the way out there with it yet because I had to see, just like everybody else, even the people in Oklahoma City, their fan base, just how this team reacts to those adverse situations. In the playoffs, it's kind of like the mob, meaning that, you stay on, but it's hard for mobs to stay on forever. At some point, somebody trying to take your spot, gank your spot, whether it be by, legal means, however it take to get you out of that spot. And so this is what this playoff, game to me represented from the Oklahoma City Thunder standpoint. Is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was spectacular again, man. 35 points in this game. Jokic only having 20 points in this game, and the game really was decided. So they went ahead and pulled the starters, man. Like I said, this game was a little bit more ugly than maybe even the final score would indicate. And I'm just in a situation now to where this thing up for grabs this season. Any of these 4 teams can win an NBA championship. It's up for grabs, and I'm not sure which way to roll, but I'm gonna definitely give y'all, my predictions, man, as far as these series and who will move on to the NBA Finals. As the Oklahoma City Thunder take on the Minnesota Timberwolves in a few moments, man, this game will be played in Oklahoma City. Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Timberwolves, their ball club, man, that been playing some outstanding ball. Knocked out the Golden State Warriors and, ended their series, their season. A lot of people say, well, man, Steph was hurt. Steph was banged up. Steph was, wasn't able to get back into the series. And just like the Jason Tatum situation, when Steph went down, we all knew it was a wrap. I mean, not only with Anthony Edwards, but just a great play from Julius Randle. Nobody's talking about the contributions that Randle has made in this playoff run for the Minnesota Timberwolves this season here in the playoffs. I mean, just the series he had against the Los Angeles Lakers was a straight, downhill, bull in the China shop type of mentality. So we've seen that, in this series as well, with them closing out the Golden State Warriors. And like I said, just a young team who has experience because they made the Western Conference Finals last season, but a team that's able to get back into that spot. And yeah, they got a chance at getting to the NBA Finals. I think that both of these teams, Oklahoma City, best defense in the league from every statistical situation. I had to look at this team closely as well just to see, man, is they really what I call a defensive paper champion, or if there's some bark to the bite of the defense. And, whenever you got, Hardenstein, who played a good series last series, man, defensively, and also, too, Chet Holmgren, you got you a a little twin tower situation going on a little bit, and it's just really about matchups to matchups now. On the other side, you got Rudy Gobert. He's living his best life. Had a great series against the Lakers, also too. The Golden State Warriors. So he's kind of playing just that all-star caliber ball right now. And so, to me, this is just going to be epic, man, because it's really going to be about the wing players. You look at from one side of it of the coin, Minnesota. Jaden McDaniels playing some good basketball, man, for the Timberwolves. You got Mike Conley still being that, super OG at this point, making timely plays and getting timely buckets for you. Can't forget about Nas Reed, obviously. To me, he's damn near the X factor. Just his ability with sharp shooting coming off the bench, man, and just, changing the whole swag of the offense when he come into the game. And, obviously got Dante DiVincenzo in the fold as well. And so, this is a club that when you match it up across the board, they match up with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, to me, we all know what it's going to come down to, though, man. And that's the best two players in the series. And that's Anthony Edwards, man, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I think it's that simplistic. I think that whoever out of those two guys played better throughout the series is going to win this series. And I think Anthony Edwards, he may have to do a little bit more, because the interesting part about Oklahoma City is that they're gaining confidence. And Shai, even though putting up the 30 pieces, he might not necessarily need to put up the 30 pieces for them to get a win against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So this is going to be an epic series, man. I'm going to sit back and definitely enjoy, what got jumping off, man, in game number 1 in this series. But now for the prediction of this series. And this was just tough. This is tough all the way around, man, because I like both of these ball clubs. Both these ball clubs are exciting for me to watch, just the young players and just, the depth of both of these teams. And that's what we're kind of seeing a little bit as we get a little deeper into the playoffs, just the depth from both sides. Lou Dort, still been a depth piece for Oklahoma City Thunder, and so I just like what they got. Caruso was playing good ball for them, in the series, last series in the Western Conference semifinals. So, there's going to be a reckoning in this series, man. And, boy, this is going to be tough. But I'm going to go ahead and lay it out, man. I got the Oklahoma City Thunder, man, moving on in this series, man. I got it a 7-piece. This thing gonna go 7 games, man. It's just the teams are just too tight. I just think that home court advantage, especially when you get later on in the series, if it goes deep, you get in a 7-game situation. Oklahoma City was able to show that, they can beat a quality opponent on their home court in a must-win game. So I'm gonna lean on that, man. I got Oklahoma City, man, in 7 games in that series. And can't wait for that to jump off in a few moments. Coming up, man, we're going to wrap it up, man. We're going to preview the Eastern Conference Final side before we get out of here, man. And don't forget to check your boy out, man, on Facebook. If We On Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, on Twitter at We On Fire Sports. Also, too, what podcasts can be listening to, especially on Podbean. Check your boy out, man. I appreciate it. And coming back up, we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference playoffs and the rest of the show. We On Fire Sports Podcast. The spot. All right. We back, and we're going to talk about the National Football League before we transition to the Eastern Conference playoffs preview and playoff look. Man, the National Football League just got news, came across the desk today, man, is that they've approved, the NFL, the owners have approved the flag football situation for the Olympics coming up in Los Angeles. And I actually think it's a cool thing, man. I think it's a cool thing. I think that it will help promote definitely flag football when you see, some of the best players in the National Football League and some of the athletes, be able to compete in something like this. And we obviously know USA more than likely probably be dominant in it, from the get-go. But you never know, man. So it's going to be interesting to see. I just like that, the owners of the National Football League, they did the right thing, man. Just letting these players, if they want to participate in something like that, man, and definitely have an opportunity to get a gold medal, which, as we know, in every other team sport, there's a, Olympic situation. Football is the only situation without an Olympic sport. And so I think it'll be cool, man, before it get corny. You know how it go. It'd be exciting probably, the first couple Olympics, and then at some point, you probably going to have super, C-team type players, participate in it, man. But the first couple go-rounds, it could be a situation where you get, big-time players, the Tyreek Hills, the Jamar Chasers of the world, just some of the, young quarterbacks participating in it. Jaden Daniels and so forth, and Caleb Williams of the world. And so, to me, I think it could be something that's exciting. I hope that the National Football League get up with the, Olympic Committee, which I'm assuming they will, and just make sure that, everything is, streamlined to, a good situation and a good watch. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to continue to go or be an entity, unless, they're getting, eyeballs on it, getting views on it. So I thought it was an interesting thing. Also, too, across the National Football League is that we got the vote coming up for the young tush push. Yeah, to play, by the Philadelphia Eagles over the last couple of years. They've been dominant on it, man. You ain't finna stop them, man. Not 2 consecutive times stopping them with that play. And, my take about the whole, tush push play is that I'm going to be honest with y'all, man. I don't like it. And here's the reason why. Now, I wouldn't say to take it out of the NFL, but you can't allow another offensive player to be able to push another offensive player from behind, man. That's just too much leverage. You got the ability potentially, man, the dude's getting possibly hurt. And then it's a play that just by the leverage and the mechanics of it, you got a decent offensive line, and you got a guy, pushing the quarterback, who 220, 230 pounds from behind, pushing him forward. He's going to get the first down every time, man. Who we kidding? And so I don't think that they should get away completely from, the tush push play. More or less to be able to change it from an offensive player not being able to push somebody from behind, but you can still line up and, get it in how you get it in. So that's my look on it. But I think that, a lot of people, in Philadelphia especially saying that, hey, it's trying to, take away our competitive advantage, and that's how the NFL goes. I mean, we've seen it over the, the last several decades across the National Football League where we've had rule changes, certain things be able to change just based on, just certain players, certain teams being able to scheme up and be able to take advantage of situations. So we've seen this before. I mean, it's, ain't nothing but a mid bag of shells in the National Football League, man. So I thought that definitely was interesting that came across the desk. And finally, man, orange and blue skies, man. The New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's been a long time, man. It's been many moons since the Knicks have been, a championship contending team. But, I'll be the first here to say it here tonight, is that the Knicks is a championship contender. And Jalen Brunson is that guy. And I know it ain't new news, but it's definitely something that you got to put some respect on his name, man. Just the job that Tom Thibodeau also has done, as I spoke a little bit earlier, as joining the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals is a team that was there last year. And they still asking to get some respect put on their name. And that's the Indiana Pacers, man. Tyrese Halliburton, just how clutch this guy has been, man. Love him or hate him, overrated or not overrated, or underrated, however you want to view him, man. This guy's been playing some good basketball for the Indiana Pacers. And it was interesting to me because, I was listening to this a few months back into the season. I was listening to the NBA radio, man, and they had the Quinn Buckner on NBA radio. Came on, talk about the Indiana Pacers, man, and Quinn, super OG, man, from the Chicagoland area, graduate of Thornridge High School, 1972, considered one of the best teams in Illinois basketball state history. And so, Quinn knows his basketball, obviously played at Indiana and also too played in the league, but he was just talking about just this team being up and down, but being optimistic. And even, kind of putting his chest out there saying that the Pacers will be able to make a run this season. Certain things kind of click, and here we are. And this is, one of those 90 type of field type of series, man, which I love, man. Just the Pacers and the Knicks back in the day. The Knicks versus the Hicks. Classic, Reggie Miller, Patrick Ewing, John Starks, and, Charles Oakley. And so we back at that situation, man. And both these teams, a lot of people think, especially from the Indiana side, man, they're not really an exciting team to watch, man, but they just do it the right way. Rick Carlisle, he's done an outstanding job, man, transitioning up there, from winning the NBA championship with the Dallas Mavericks a few years back. And so, this team, the Pacers ain't fearing nothing, man. They taking all comers, taking it how it is. They want all the smoke, but the Knicks want all the smoke too. And so this is going to be a classic Classic, man, series, man. Just old school, like I said, old school 90s feel, man. Going back 30 plus years ago, man, with these two teams. I think this version of these two teams is going to be another, I think, 7-piece. Yeah, I got 2 7-pieces. I got one on the Western Conference side and I got one on the Eastern Conference side. I think this thing goes 7. But for this one, I think the Indiana Pacers are going to get to the NBA Finals. Yeah, I said it. I think the Pacers are going to get to the NBA Finals. I just think that for me, man, they just a team that they still don't feel like they respected, and they got some good pieces over there, from Pascal Siakam being, a veteran, former NBA champion. Miles Turner, one of the best, shooting, bigs in the league. See how that matchup be with Karl Anthony Towns in this series. Obviously you got Nembhard playing some good ball for them. You got Benedict Mathurin, man, being just that heel out there, putting in, grind work out there. And so this is a team, even though I like the Knicks, I just think that you might see the curse of Tom Thibodeau rear his ugly head maybe in this series. And what I mean by that is maybe a player maybe getting nicked up and being out. The Knicks been murdered in the midnight oil, man, burning the candle from both ends as far as just the lineup and just the amount of minutes that these, guys have played over the season. So that's going to be an interesting look for me just in this series, man. But I think this thing is going 7. It's really a coin flip. But I'm just liking just what Indiana is doing. They trying to, knock out all bombs, as they would say. And so this is going to be a tough matchup, man, moving forward. We'll definitely see what that thing do coming up tomorrow. But, man, first and foremost, man, I appreciate you checking me out, man, on We on 5 Sports Podcast, the spot. Man, appreciate all them good check-ins, man, and everything, man. And we'll be right back at you towards the end of the week. Thanks for listening to episode number 53.